Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another Propagandacast Lehr. We'll be having another little educational lesson right here. This time the subject matter at hand is heavy machine guns and how not to utilize them. It's something I've been looking at recently a lot of, and of course, after the recent patches, I sort of had a lot of examples that could really work towards, how not towards using it. And yes, I know it necessarily not always the best way to sort of explain things in the negative, but I figured some clear examples in which happens when you don't use them properly might also serve as ample food for thought for other players. And these are player submissions, not necessarily by the players themselves, of course, but their opponents might be, but still, the point still stands. There are ways to use a heavy machine gun, there are ways to use them poorly. They are support weapons, and sadly a lot of people seem to think support weapons mean you support them, not the other way around. Also, more importantly, some people seem to think, my god, this is shooting a lot of bullets, or by Stalin's mustache, this is shooting a lot of bullets, taka taka taka. I mean, they seem to think, that suddenly makes it a Wunderwaffe that can stop the enemy's force. Of course, again, they sort of fail to accept, again, it's a support weapon, that it has certain particular limitations due to it being able to shoot a lot of bullets, but also being rather more of a cumbersome weapon, thus allowing it to shoot that many bullets, and thus sort of forget, that part. So there are some vital aspects to remember that in how to utilize your heavy machine gun. Our little display here will be King of the North. What north, I do not know. Perhaps the north of Wales, the north of Norway, or the north of Djibouti. Again, I don't know. And again, poor Yuri goes down, and again, Yuri's woes as he's being bulleted is not really our concern. No, what we're seeing here, of course, is heavy machine gun. Again, it is a support weapon with a set-up time. Again, that sort of limits, how it can be used at the front line, for example. And also, of course, for example, limiting how it can shift around the house. And here we go, already. We see here that his immediate thought is popping into a house. And of course, here's the thing, in particular, considering this house, it certainly has some limitations. Of course, in this case, it turns out nicely, but of course, there's the other thought. Some might be happening, and of course, I'll just pause to briefly explain, well, why we just, moved it up to support his frontline troops a bit better, because right here, of course, his troops had to be rather far back for it to actually aid him, and even then, there was still some time before, he actually shifted over to the requisite windows. So already there, generally support weapons work better when you actually use them to actively support your troops rather than passively support them by, popping in a house and sort of hoping, combat will happen near it.
Enemy troops attacking!
Konska's being pushed back there, Pioneer's here. Rushed away. Bit of fire there on the Panzer, although that's clearly burned out long time since. But again, just notice here, he doesn't actually move it away, he doesn't actually do any more with the MG42. And you might be wondering, well, what the devil does that matter? Also, right here, of course, he knew this was here, so little fun fact. And again, nice use of the Molotov, and again, poor reaction from King of the North. Again, not very regal display of infantry. But again, note, he could, have the MG42 supporting here or elsewhere, and of course, he could also attack from a much better angle than that way, right into where he knew the Konska squad were. Also noting here that Slimp is being awfully passive in a not really helpful manner, but still, this MG42 is currently doing pretty much nothing. In some sense, it might, be holding off Slink from moving in, but at the same time, it's an MG42 alone in the building. What does that mean? It all means that Slink basically just needs to attack from two directions, lob a Molotov in, and that's it. If you really want to insist on popping an MG42 in a building sort of to form a defense and leave it alone, you're going to need to do a lot better than just stuffing the MG42 in there. As I keep saying in my cards and such, prepare a position. You might be wondering, what does prepare a position mean, Comrade Dane? Or what does this mean, Herr Dane? Barbed wire. Limit your opponent's ability to move, lay down mines, but don't just make it so the other bastards can run up and Molotov. It'll just run around it in Molotov. So again, that's something I'll just keep in mind, because note here, That is 240 manpower, which, as I'm sure you can guess, is currently doing absolutely nothing. Also doing here, of course, poor infantry tactics, as he's spreading his troops out too far. But again, nothing is actually happening. Again, whereas we are seeing here, Slink is actually pouring in all of his manpower into the battlefield, compared to King of the North.
How can we help?
As I'm sure you can figure out, that's not good. Again, that is essentially 240 manpower, which might as well, for all practical purposes, not exist, since it is so far removed from everything else. I mean, this is not really a good position to be in unless you're absolutely pressured on the defensive. And when you're 5 minutes into the game, and for that matter earlier, you're not pressured into the defensive. If you are, you're in serious shit. But clearly, King of the North isn't, but he's very much sending himself into that position by keeping an MG42 far removed essentially from the battlefield. And again, that is 240 manpower essentially wasted. Again, that is not 240 manpower being used to support its infantry. That is not 240 manpower supporting the frontline troops. That is not 240 manpower dealing damage, killing, denying Slink the use of his 240 manpower, or for that matter, keeping his own other 240 manpower alive. Again, that is 240 manpower, essentially a waste, a drain on your own resources, even on the upkeep. I mean, that's essentially all it is. It's upkeep in a house. He's basically paying for the MG42 crew to have a nice summer holiday in the Russian countryside. Don't do that. Good players actually use their MG42 to support, and only if they really have to, pop them into houses on the defensive, and even then it's part of a larger defense. It's not an MG42 on its own. But again, I'll just sort of, further hammer in this with another example which really highlights the problem of just, popping in your MG42 wherever it wants. Here we are, on to the next one. We're still here in Holotny Ferma, though now it's winter. Time has passed. Yes, indeed, ladies and gentlemen, it is all of a sudden winter between these two episodes. In real life too, yeah, totally. Anyways, Infantry Company up. This time we'll be looking at Jack Donaghy. Infantry Company going up. Noting here he's starting right off with an MG42. That is dangerous stuff. That is not something I'd recommend unless they're a hardened veteran. Otherwise, usually more to indicate if someone is a novice and again goes daka 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 daka. Again, I'm perhaps being a bit, crass, a bit harsh, but again, it still, for me, rather feels to be the mindset of a rather crude, primitive mind, which doesn't really appreciate rolls, and again, just seems to focus on it shoots bullets, it's worked against infantry, and then again ignores the other facts, like it's a support weapon, and all that, and all of its limitations. So again, that is vital to keep in mind why I'm making this video, because again, it's something I've been seeing for ages, and I suppose about time I got around to actually saying something about it, and hopefully educating people on the manner on how you utilize a machine gun. Of course, some of this stuff here can also be applied to other matters, for example, not having units and about doing nothing for ages. That can apply to a lot of things, but also some of the things here in terms of how he actually utilizes support weapons can also be utilized. But there we go. Note here, he's sort of, oh, well, I'll just not pop into the house here. Okay, one trap averted. He keeps moving, but, as you might be noticing, there might be another problem here. In particular, that is he's moving about at the front line now. And again, he's got very short reaction time because, again, his men are not eagle-eye. They are not equipped with binoculars they can use while walking. So again, they can't see very much far. And again, that allows an opponent to quickly spring a trap. And again, this is not how you use an MG42. This is absolutely rubbish. If you must, and this is how a veteran player would do, they would have the Pioneers lead the way for the MG42. They would not have the MG42 having a nice trot there alongside the Pioneers. And right, of course, here we sort of notice the second thing. We're seeing here, of course, the other thing was talking about, about resources being applied in the field. And what do we see here? His MG42, of course, again, this is, again, I would like to sort of figure out, or mark as another novice hallmark, let's rush for that building right away there, because I can lock down a lot of stuff. And, of course, all while I'm doing this, I will utterly ignore what the enemy might actually be doing. And that's rather what's happening here. Again, there's sort of this neat little plan in Jack Donaghy's head. He just thinks, if I can get there, I have won the war. And, of course, he then, utterly ignores the possibility of anything else, in which case, here we're seeing 3 conscript squads. We've got 1 grenadier here. Had he, had his MG42 a bit more mobile, also not taking this far path, what could he have done? He might have said, maybe it was an idea actually supported my candidates with the MG42. In which case, you know, he might stand a slightly better chance now against here. But again, what is happening? Strix is actually actively utilising his 240 manpower sets against Jack Donaghy's, and what also does this mean? Again, this means again the 240 is doing nothing, and the 240 here is facing off against 240, 480, 720 manpower. Of course, these things are of course not meant to, you know, that raw manpower of course will win that way. But again, you know, I mean, he can do some damage if he handles this correctly. But still, the point is more, again, the fact is he's got 240 doing nothing here, and again, while his opponent is actively utilising much more manpower in the battlefield. And again, this 240 manpower will do nothing to support that. And again, once it's over there, I mean, also note again, there are many angles this building can be approached from. Again, it's in that regard also a poor position, because again, it's on its own. It's a support weapon left alone where it cannot support anything, which again means it can be easily outmaneuvered. I mean, all it takes is Strix moves in from here, Molotov, good night. Let's just return, but again, still vital to point out. Again, this is sort of the novice behavior, which rather ignores again the concepts of roads, and again only focus, you know, oh, it's anti-infantry, which again is something you see a lot, and then casually ignores the rest, because again roads rather determine how you utilize something tactically. And again, note here, this kind of is ultimately though well overpowered. He retreats much too late, and again that's almost an entire squad wiped out, if not directly done so. And again, had the MG42 been there, he could have at least, you know, covered its retreat. Well, that matters, he should also just have pulled back from there. But again, hopefully you sort of get the point. We also see his opponent actually, you know, cautiously reconning ahead. And again, being aware, oh wait, there's an MG42 there, so even then he's going to take countermeasures to deal with it, or at least minimize the effect. Though for some reason, Strix seems very careless towards actually dealing with it, because again he just jumped over the fence here and Molotov did. Instead he actually pulls back, so right here Strix is clearly perhaps not the sharpest knife in the drawer, or perhaps he just doesn't have Molotovs. Oh wait, he does have it, so there's actually absolutely no excuse. Never mind then. But again, 240 manpower achieving what? Yes, it's denying air, so it's much better than the previous one, which again was here, where again you can't really deny much of a vital area. But even then, of course, a clever opponent will just walk around it. I mean, such a thing here only holds value if you can actually force your opponent to come to it to a certain extent, if there's a need to it. I mean, that's what the Germans found out during World War II with all their Fechtplatz and Festungs, you know, once the so realized after they clear out the first one. Boris, I think this is a bad idea. Why not just walk around Festung and leave them to rot? That is a great idea, Vasily. Let us do that instead. And they largely did so, except in a few cases where, of course, they had to go through them. But again, what is Strix doing? He's ignoring it. Again, in some, you might say, well, you know, yes, he successfully held the centre. Then, of course, you realise its own ammunitions point, which he has the rest of the map, of course, includes all the victory points, fuel, at which point, all of a sudden, it seems a lot less impressive. And again, all it's going to take is one determined assault or a single mortar. So there are definitely some problems there. And there we go again, another quick example here. Again, my apologies if I'm being a bit harsh, but after so long time and after seeing it repeatedly happen, despite, you know, sort of casually mentioning in a lot of my cards, you know, don't do this, it still happens, so apparently I need to make a more specific episode on the subject matter. But moving on to the next one, the final one right here for this Propagandacast Lehr, and hopefully I will not need to make another episode on this topic. Otherwise, I'm going to have to bring out the jackboots. And on to the third match, will be about 2.5 minutes into the game, sort of for where we are going to be sort of looking at next, the next set of particular issues. What sort of problems? Again, there's going to be a bit of a team game special, sort of again displaying some of the problems that can happen from a player who sort of wants to play defensively in support of his teammate, which again is a grand idea, but then tends to ignore some fundamentals in, again, understanding support weapons. Also, a quick note, of course, if I haven't all mentioned, but all of this, of course, applies to Maxims and the Dushka as well, the DHSK, the Soviet 50 caliber. I mean, just because I'm nicely focusing on MG42s, because a lot of German, again, seem to make this mistake a lot more than Russians, at least what I've gotten. I mean, this easily applies to Soviet players. I've also seen them make these mistakes, and they can easily make them as well. So, I mean, this applies to these weapons as well. Again, some things also apply to other sort of support weapons and other ideas in terms of, you know, conducting a defense. But again, the main focus here is heavy machine guns, with MG42 serving as the primary example. So hopefully that will be cleared up.
Grenadiers.
Noting he's gotten 2 heavy machine guns in that regard, you know, a nice idea, you know, 2 grenadiers, 2 heavy machine guns, sort of, you know, can still be used aggressively, but still serves as defensive purpose, though to a much larger degree. Little fighting here. Bit of fighting over here. Decent use of the MG42 and support of the grenadiers there. Nothing greatly surprising.
You need something built? You need
MG42 being lugged ahead. Officer Buck charging in.
Here comes Ivan! They're chewing us up! HMG here.
MG42 slowly setting up there in support of the infantry. Good. Good. So far, so good. Though, no, I mean, it's actually not really taking much use of anything. I mean, he's obviously trying, in this case, of course, to support the flank, but he could also, you know, set up and support the Grenadiers more directly and have the other MG42 come flank. But he's actually using it here, which, again, is alright. But there we go, actually shifting over. I think should have done that earlier. He's going to be firing in on this. Of course, he's firing directly. He probably would benefit more from actually trying to flank, because just like, you know, cover is directional in terms of damage, it also is to a certain extent also the suppression. Right here, though, a lot of them were outside, so that largely turned out alright for them. But now a new contender appears, the scout car. The scout car. The M3A1. American made. Capitalist made.
Machine gun squad. We are ready for action.
And there we go, flamethrower engineers. A dangerous thing for any unguarded and poorly placed support units. Let us see what Mr. Blackhawk here does.
Our headquarters has been improved. We can now build light mechanized infantry.
Overdose here, handling things alright, using his MG42, as you might be noticing, sort of slowing in support, though, and right here he seems to sort of neglecting Heinz. Yeah, there seems to be a big fence in front of us. Good, then we can look busy without getting into combat. But there we go. Scout coming up here, staying a good distance away from the Grenadiers. Nicely handled there by Officer Buck. No issue here with the other players, it's mostly just Blackhawk, which really sort of exemplifies and really rather why he chucked it in here and rather than using for an actual cast. There we go, repairing. Grenadiers moving in. Also knowing an MG42 in the church. And again, very much little to support or guard it. There's some pioneers. Again, it's not really part of a front line, which again is dangerous. That's really the sort of position you need for infantry, with likely a machine gun or something. Not really a machine gun like that. Not without, again, ample barbed wire and mines. But there we go. No, he actually pops this in there as well and leaves it on his own. Again, knowing that his opponent has a scout car with common use, which likely should, of course, be figured with a flamethrower, he actually does something like that. He leaves his MG42s on their own, unsupported, against something which is exceptionally good at supporting support units. I mean, that's right. My apologies, not sure what happened there. Computer freaked out a bit. I was something, but I'm not sure. But I'll wait back here. Point being, though, you don't really leave an MG42 alone against something that is really good at dealing with them, like a scout car of the Soviet kind, German kind, anything sort of vehicle like that. Instead, what we do see is Blackhawk not only put his MG42 in there, he actually left this one on their own against support units, support other things. Partly because they also need this protection of the infantry in front of them, or at least the time to get the devil out of there. With this, there's absolutely no time to get out of there before it's too late. I mean, this is pretty much, again, the sort of idea, you know, just leaving two things that can easily be dealt with by anything that, you know, really is determined. Again, this doesn't even require severe determination. It's just drive up, burn away, keep driving around, and pretty much get it on the retreat. I mean, really, this is just a bad idea, and would be it, you know, it's the same as the Russians with Maxims in these buildings, and there was a Flammpanzerwagen coming up. or the light infantry half tank with some irate panzer gunners in it, you know, quickly popping around until the MG42 doesn't want to turn around, they'll pop a grenade in, or for that matter, they just replace the panzer gunners with the Pioneer with the flamethrower itself. Overall, not really good thinking. Overall, poor positioning of the poor gentleman here, the MG42 crews, and of course, let's see what happens here.
The enemy is taking our territory.
Coming horse under the intense administration there of the MG42. Scout car moving up. And burning away. Though right here, what Officer Buck does is actually pretty dumb, you know. He's driving straight in front of me, just letting it fire. I mean, imagine if he'd been using armor-piercing incendiary rounds, that scout car would have been dead. So that's actually pretty dumb by Officer Buck. I mean, no excuses there. That's sort of like driving a tank straight up in front of a pack and just parking in there. But then, I mean, still with the MG42, he just sort of leaves it, he doesn't retreat it. Taking the long route around here, but either way, that hardly looks good there for the MG crew. Forced to run for it, of course, lost again. Poor preservation again, poor understanding of the MG42. Of course, Soviet teams can have a bit more leeway due again to the fact they have larger squads, but even then, I mean, a determined German player can still, you know, quickly make short work of it. In most regards. So, I mean, that is something very much to keep in consideration. I mean, with the building, for example, again, you know, even, for example, it's not a flamethrower, but just some assault grenades with assault grenades, that can quickly assault and clear. So, you know, be careful, be mindful. It doesn't take much, you know, sort out an MG42 if you're not thinking it through. Or for that matter, an accident, or a Dushka. Also looks like someone here was reckless with their MGs for the Grenadiers. That's hardly good either, but there we go. He still retains the MG42. He's not really got anything supporting it, and what happens then, of course, is quickly it is isolated, and of course quickly moving with something that can sort it out. So again, hardly a sensible approach there. He doesn't even pull out the MG42. It even looks like he's going to lose it, so... So again, just some quick examples here on how not to use your MG42, and hopefully some sensible explanations on why you don't actually do it, what the risks are, what the results are, and of course, you know, some mild suggestions on what to do. Again, the largest one also being, you know, have it actually supporting your infantry actively. That is what pretty much all of the good players do most of the time, and they only actually stuff them into buildings when they absolutely have to, when they're absolutely forced on the defensive in most cases. Or if they're being extremely aggressive, but again, that's not really the case here either. So in that regard, not really solid handling, and again, you know, a lot of props that can rise with it, a lot of things you can actually end up sabotaging yourself with by, again, simply having it just do nothing, essentially being a drain on your economy. When you can actually be using something better, and you know, actually do some damage to your opponent instead of, you know, yourself. So hopefully this will help a lot of novice players out, you know, better understand the heavy machine guns, you know, get a better along with them, do more damage with them, hold up better with them overall, and hopefully also lose them a lot less. So I hope this has been an educational episode. I hope people learned a lot from it. If they did, wonderful. If they didn't, please tell me how I could do this better, because really it's something I really want to get across. Don't use heavy machine guns like this, and I hope this bloody well does a damn good job at it. Otherwise, this is Imperial Dane saying, hope you enjoyed. Feel free to share with everyone so they can also be enlightened by my eternal and noble wisdom. And so on, and of course feel free to send in replays. I mean, of course most of these things, you know, sort of, you know, things I might not use for a full episode, but still has some good points, so, you know, even then. But this is Imperial Dane saying cheers, hope you enjoyed, and keep sending in those replays.